Europe, where the fifth round of critical nuclear talks between the US and Iran began today at 11 o'clock in Rome. A senior US official, Steve Witkoff, travelled to Italy for the negotiations as both sides sought to resolve long-standing issues over Iran's nuclear program. Ahead of the talks, Iran issued a stern warning to both Israel and the United States, stating it would hold Washington accountable for any Israeli attack on its nuclear facilities. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi reiterated that the country was open to increased inspections of its nuclear sites, but would not compromise on its right to enrich uranium. Tehran pointed out fundamental differences with the US, particularly over uranium enrichment, which remained a major sticking point. The US had pushed for Iran to cease all enrichment, while Tehran insisted that it will not give up its enrichment rights. Meanwhile, the Israeli Prime Minister's office confirmed that US President Donald Trump agreed on the need to ensure Iran does not acquire nuclear weapons. As talks moved forward, it remained unclear whether these fundamental divides could be bridged. We're now joined by Ross Feingold, political risk analyst, to discuss this further. Thank you very much, Ross, for joining us. These talks have resumed after a 2-week pause. What, if anything, has shifted in the bargaining position since previous talks in Muscat, Oman? Ross, I believe you're muted.
Yeah, sorry about that. There's been some talk about how could Iran maintain a civilian nuclear power program without enriching uranium, perhaps under the direction or the presence of an international consortium. So there's been some talk about that, but the bottom line for the United States has not changed, which is Iran cannot have the ability to enrich uranium. And this really is a bottom line, and the Iranians are going to have to come around to that reality if there's going to be a deal.
Ross, when people hear that statement, enriching uranium for peaceful purposes, they might have some questions. I was wondering if you can explain that to them. How does one go about enriching uranium peacefully and not for nuclear weapons?
Well, from a technological perspective, frankly, it's a lot easier and faster to enrich for civilian nuclear power. Enriching uranium so that it could actually work in a nuclear weapon is a much more longer and difficult process. But what the concern for the United States and Israel is that Iran really already has the ability, if they wanted to enrich uranium so that it could be used in nuclear weapons. And again, this would cross the bottom line for the United States and by extension for Israel. So there's really little doubt that Iran has the capability to enrich uranium for use in nuclear weapons, no matter what they say. I mean, they could say over and over again that they only want to enrich for civilian nuclear power purposes, but there's really no doubt that they have the knowledge to enrich uranium so that it's sufficient to be used in nuclear weapons. And this is what the negotiations are all about. Because Iran has mastered the ability to enrich uranium so that it could be used in nuclear weapons, this is considered a threat to the United States' interest, and certainly it's a threat to Israel. And that's not going to be tolerated if there is going to be a deal.
Ross, Iran has offered more inspections, but won't say it will cap enrichment. From a standpoint, do you think Trump will make this deal? Do you think that will be approved?
That's a really good question, because what you just asked still is inconsistent with the United States position. The United States position, as enunciated by negotiator Steve Witkoff, is that the United States will not tolerate Iran having any capability to enrich uranium, including for civilian nuclear power. So if Iran within the country is going to have a civilian nuclear power capability, the enrichment is going to have to be within the hands of some kind of international third-party consortium. And that's what maybe they're going to talk about and agree to, although it doesn't seem like they're not there yet. But again, it is the bottom line for the United States that Iran cannot have the ability to enrich uranium.
Ross, Israel is openly coordinating with Washington. We've seen Benjamin Netanyahu's statements on the talks. Could visible US-Israel alignment possibly push Iran away from these negotiations?
That's also quite an unknown at the moment. The reality is Israel has threatened to attack Iran's nuclear enrichment capability if there is no deal. And Israel's bottom line is even more clear than the United States. And Israel will not tolerate Iran maintaining a uranium enrichment capability, whether it's civilian or for military nuclear bomb purposes. And Israel has made that very clear. They have the military capability to reach Iran. They might not be able to fully destroy the facilities in an attack, but they could certainly do serious damage and set back Iran's nuclear capabilities. So Israel's position is also abundantly clear, and Iran needs to keep that in mind, because if Israel does attack Iran and is successful, it's going to be hugely embarrassing for the Iranian regime.
Ross, finally, President Trump has floated a 2-month deadline and hinted, he's threatened Iran with possible military action if diplomacy doesn't come through. Does that strengthen US leverage or box everyone in these negotiations, do you think?
That's also a really difficult question. The reason for that is no matter what the Trump administration says, there's still the Israel factor to consider. Even if the United States was to say they might use a military option, we know for a fact that Israel will use a military option. So Trump's threat, Iran might not take it seriously, but again, Iran has to take very seriously the threat that Israel would utilize a military option. Trump has been very reluctant to use military power overseas in his first term. They did assassinate the Iranian Revolutionary Guard's general, but that was really the exception, not the rule. So we can only speculate whether Trump in his second administration is willing to bomb Iran's nuclear facilities, but we know that Israel is willing to do that.
Ross Feingold, thank you very much for joining us on the program and your insight. We now move